Hello, welcome to this video where I'm going to talk about some top teams for the new season. At first, it's always fun to try out new stuff, but you'll find that your Trailblaze Sudowoodo suddenly isn't as good against Pokemon like Medicham. It's probably good against Alolan Sandslash, and other meta Pokemon, I don't know. And in this collaboration that I have now with Stadium Elite, which I'm also a part of, these teams are like really meta, so definitely probably a little bit boring for the start, but I think later on, if you want to climb to that top, the rank 20 real quick, or the top elo, I think these are some really good viable teams. Yeah, let's just run through these teams just one by one real quick. Before I do that, I want to thank Crazy Filmmaker real quick for putting his effort in and volunteering into making this graph with us. And I'll put the link of this graph from Twitter into the description here, so you can find it real quick. Now, let's take a look at the first team. The first team that I have here is from myself, and it's probably one of the more boring ones, that's for sure. There's probably teams with like Medicham, Lickitung, Carbink as well, right? Just basically Carbink instead of Bastiodon here. It's a very straightforward team. If you suspect there might be a flyer in the back, you safe switch the Medicham, you bait out like a Noctowl or Mandibuzz, and then you let Medicham go, you can clean it up with Carbink, and then potentially sweep with Venusaur. Venusaur does not need to be Shadow. I do prefer Shadow because Frenzy just hits harder. Now, we do have a couple core breakers. I listed Nidoqueen, Trevenant, Alolan Sandslash. Those are pretty tough. Nidoqueen is probably, I wouldn't say a hard loss per se, but it's definitely difficult to deal with because Carbink does terrible there. Because Nidoqueen resists everything. Medicham's counters are resisted, but you do have the Ice Punch, and Venusaur is just too fragile to really deal with Poison Fang and Vine Whip. Regardless, I would safe switch the Medicham if you would face one. There's usually dark types that Carbink does well in the back. One of the core breakers that I have here is Alolan Sandslash, and you see here the matchup below. Alolan Sandslash is okay in the lead, to be honest. If you have like a very high attack Carbink, I'm not sure exactly what attack you need to hit that breakpoint, but you could farm down Alolan Sandslash in the 2s, which is pretty cool in my opinion. But you see here that the 0 shields and the 2s are quite close. Now, one thing that you do have to keep in mind, if you face an Alolan Sandslash lead, there's likely a Medicham answer in the back, like a Sableye or something. The other one being Trevenant. Carbink actually wins the 0 shields here, so it's really not the worst. Also, the 2 shields are very close, so really just play that out because your Medicham nor Venusaur really want to see this Pokemon. Take a look at team number 2. The next one's from my good friend Scaffo, the best performing European at the World Championships, and he also has a very standard line with Lickitung, Medicham, and Deoxys. He prefers Dynamic Punch on Medicham in this case, because of Registeels, right? Registeel usually can win like the 0 shields against Medicham if you don't have a fighting charge attack. That's why Scaffo prefers Dynamic Punch here. And also because maybe he feels a little bit touched by the Psychic nerf there. Core breakers for this line are like Mandibuzz, not a very difficult one. Medicham and Deoxys can do very well there, but with the Aerial Ace buff, it might be worse now for Medicham. And but they both hit super effective with that charge attack, so it's not like completely, it's not a big problem. Noctowl might be, however, but on the other hand, its pace has been nerfed now because Skytech is more expensive. So Medicham, I believe Medicham outpaces now with the Ice Punches, which might make it quite fine. It's really just Lickitung struggling against these 3 core breakers because the licks are resisted. Umbreon, not a super big deal for Deoxys there because you have super effective counters, but again, also not a favorable matchup. So as we see here, Medicham does lose to Noctowl, but it's it's not the worst matchup for a fighter, right? Like the 0 shields are extremely close, Noctowl barely wins, and in the 2 shields, it's also a very close matchup. Against Mandibuzz, it's super close. It's basically, this is also with Snarl, it's not with Air Slash, by the way. Air Slash, you do lose his Medicham. But with Snarl, it just gets so close. Mandibuzz outpaces a little bit quicker now with the Aerial Ace, and it's just a very close matchup here. Next, Deoxys against the Dark types. As you see below here, it's really not that great against like Mandibuzz or Umbreon. You really kind of want to get an energy lead somewhere. So maybe if you lead into a Dark type, maybe it's better to just go in the Medicham. Perhaps you can like bait out a Ghost type, get energy on Lickitung, and it makes the Dark type easier to manage for Deoxys and Lickitung later on. Now, this team is kind of something that I'm pretty eager to try out myself, and why is that? There's new moves! There's not new Pokemon in here, really. Golisopod already was buffed last season with the Shadow Claw and Liquidation. Right, it was a really good combination. Now, X-Scissor, I believe, is a Surf will be a Surf clone, which might make Golisopod even better. It covers the fighters and Swampert really well, which you do need to bait out with the Registeel. Registeel wins a lot of zero shields, so I do think Registeel is a better safe switch. Now, you are pretty weak to Charizard with this team, so that's why I think on Diggersby, you probably want Hyper Beam. Scorching Sands is 50 energy. It's quite manageable with Mudshot, even Quick Attack. I think Mudshot is better, in my opinion, just to get there faster. And Hyper Beam just cover those flyers better, right? Just like Charizard is a little bit of a core breaker to this team otherwise. And same for Pelipper. So the two core breakers that I listed here real quick. Pelipper will be a very tough lead, but you have to stay with Golisopod, and this is why. It's a horrible matchup for Diggersby. You generally only get to one Hyper Beam, which will get the Pelipper quite low, but it doesn't do enough damage to knock it out. So need to stay with Golisopod. Registeel can take the charge attacks from Pelipper quite well. It's only difficult if Pelipper is paired with something like a ground type or a Medicham, which is very possible. So Pelipper is a big liability against this line, I would say. Azumarill, not so much, on the other hand. I listed Azumarill as a core breaker simply because it doesn't have to shoot anything from Golisopod generally. Golisopod is the one to use shields here, because the charge attacks from Golisopod don't do much. So your opponent could get like a nasty energy advantage on your back line. You kind of have to stay in because Diggersby doesn't do great against Azumarill, and then a potential like Medicham could be very rough in the back. So that's why I do think it's a core breaker. But as you can see, like if needed, Golisopod can take on Azumarill just fine because of those Shadow Claws. I think the ones could be a little bit dependent on getting the liquidation debuff or not. But regardless, the twos you should take anytime. So I really like this team from Guido. I will likely try it out myself too. The next team is from my good friend Amindjoke, and if you see Amindjoke play, you know there will be Alolan Sandslash. And he also really likes Meta, so obviously there's Medicham. All these teams, a lot of teams have Medicham, is still really good because it just has that exact coverage that's needed in the meta, right? It's a counter user that also beats other fighters, and that just makes Medicham so good. Now, this team does require you to bait out the opposing Medicham with the Diggersby, and that's why you need Psychic on your Medicham to bait it out. I think Azumarill lead can be quite tough. You have to stay in. Trevenant is an actual problem. However, usually if you swap into a Trevenant, you bait something. In the Diggersby, you bait something out. If they do stay in, you gotta go for the Scorching Sands. At least Diggersby does lift 2 Seed Bombs if you have an Excel one, so you can put in good work against the Trevenant. Frostlass is also a problem because it core breaks both Medicham and Diggersby, but Medicham can deal reasonable damage if you shoot someone. I believe if you bait twice, you could even win it, but that's a tough call to make. You ideally want Alolan Sandslash on all these 3 Pokemon. This case that I have here, this is not you're going to get with Medicham lead. But if you bait twice and you have 1 counter advantage, you actually can win the 2 shields against Frostlass. Now, what I would do is probably just let Medicham go in the lead because that's very difficult to deal with. Or you use 1 shield. You cannot use 2 shields. If you use 2 shields, Frostlass might be able to Shadow Ball your Alolan Sandslash later, which does too much damage, really. It basically puts you into the red immediately. The second one I want to show you here is Diggersby against Trevenant with Scorching Sands Hyper Beam. And you see actually that the 2s, these are 2 rank 1s that I simulated. You tie, which is actually incredible. Now, it might be a little bit debuff dependent, right, on Diggersby's side, because the Scorching Sands does debuff the Trevenant. But even the 1 shield just is pretty close. So Trevenant should not be a really big deal if you lead into it and you swap into Diggersby. Another team that I have listed here is from my good Dutch friend Enhoff. If you know Enhoff, you know Sharon Stapu Fini. She hacking loves Stapu Fini. And I really like this team because it's like both sort of ABB against Medicham, but also the safe switch baits out the Pokemon that beats the closest. So in this case, if there's a Lantern in the back, you likely bait it out with Tapu Fini. Since Spark is more expensive now, people might tend to run more Water Gun Lantern, and in that case, Tapu Fini is not even that bad. You can actually beat the Lantern, but that might be a little bit bait dependent and scary to do. The core breakers for this line, however, I think the first and the third one might be quite common. Lickitung especially, because with the Noctowl nerf, Lickitung thrives more. However, that might be neutralized by Greedent quite quickly. I think Dunsparce also a pretty good core breaker to both Alolan Sandslash and Pelipper. It beats Alolan Sandslash with his shield down, which is terrible. And then the Deoxys basically can hit all 3 Pokemon for super effective damage. So I do like the team, and I think it's very good. I think it's a very good team. But I think the 2 core breakers that are listed there are also very common Pokemon. So the first one, Lantern, Watergun Lantern. Not a core breaker, but I just want to showcase what if a Lantern swaps into your Tapu Fini, and how badly do you need Switch? Do you need your Pelipper on a Scrafty, Obstagoon, Medicham? You might want to bait, because if you land 2 baits, or you shield the Thunderbolt correctly, or you call a Surf, or whatever, you can win this matchup if needed, and you win it quite well too. You leave with like a little bit under half HP as Tapu Fini, so definitely something you need to keep in mind here. The second one I want to show here is that Pelipper is a really good boy, and even though Deoxys is a core breaker, you can actually make the 1 shields really close. You do need 1 bait to outpace if they go for double Thunderbolt. And in the 2 shields, I think you need 1 bait as well. You need 1 bait, and then you can go straight Hurricane against Deoxys there. But you win the 2s really hard if you can land 1 bait there. So basically, those are the core breakers that or the matchup that I want to show with this matchup. So these were 5 of the 10 teams that I just featured here from some of our best battlers. And I will post, again, a link to this graph in the description. The other 5 will be featured by my good friend, my teammate, my co-content creator, Rise to Occasion. I will also put a link to his video in the description as well. We will try to do this weekly, and we will make content with these teams as well. Again, thank you for everyone else who helped on this, specifically Crazy Filmmaker for making this graph and, you know, putting all his effort into this. So hope you liked the video, and I'll see you in the next one. I'll try to upload more GBL videos from Monday on or so, because this weekend I'll be at a wedding party. All right, have a good one.